Although these days EVs like the Tesla Cybertruck are taking over the headlines, American muscle cars continue growing in popularity and value. But even if you're not a fan of muscle cars, you're still familiar with the legendary models like the Ford Mustang and Dodge Challenger. That's because muscle cars have always been built to stand out. But there are a couple muscle cars that are so rare we barely even see them out on the roads. Only a handful of people own some of these cars, and some are so sought after that there's a years-long waiting list. Let's see what makes these American muscle cars so rare and why most of us will never be able to have one. This one is especially for all the car collectors because it's Chevrolet's most powerful factory drag car ever made. The Chevrolet Z-11 Impala was a rare factory-built drag racer. It's an offshoot of a full-size Impala. It was designed with one purpose in mind, and that was high speed. Its engine was 427 cubic inch V8, taken from Chevy's 409, but it had been changed. This rare car had 430 horsepower, but many fanatics believe that it actually produced up to 500 horsepower due to its high-end features. These features included forged steel crankshaft, Highland camshaft, and dual-quad carburetors. But the reason why this muscle car was so rare is because all the materials were lightweight. This was meant to improve performance for racing. The car had aluminum body panels, front fenders, bumpers, and supports. Only 57 Z-11 Impalas were ever built, so imagine that only 50 people in the world own this car. The limited production happened because it was designed for only professional drag racers. These cars were sold to famous racers, and it wasn't meant to be used on the streets. Due to this, even the limited number of cars got wrecked after racing too hard. Because of its high-performance, low production numbers and use in competitive racing, the Z-11 Impala has become a highly impressive collector's car. Its rarity and overall historical significance as one of Chevy's most powerful factory drag cars explains why we don't see anyone driving this car. The Dodge Coronet was produced between 1949 and 1976, and it quickly became famous in the muscle car era. The 1969 Dodge Coronet Super B and RT versions became very famous. These high-performance models had engines like the 440 cubic inch V8, producing 375 horsepower, or the other option was the amazing 426 Hemi V8, which produced 425 horsepower. The Coronet also had aggressive styling with twin hood scoops, wide rear wheel arches, and functional air vents. Let's see why the Dodge Coronet is so rare these days. First of all, only a couple of buyers chose the more expensive and larger engine like the 426 Hemi. The Hemi models were built in very limited numbers, around 1,000 were manufactured. But since this car was also meant to be used in racing, there weren't many original and stable models left. But after a few years, muscle cars from this era made a comeback, so the collectors were running to get their hands on a Dodge Coronet in its perfect shape. The Shelby GT500 Super Snake got introduced in 1967, easily one of the rarest and most legendary muscle cars. It was put together by Carroll Shelby, and the Super Snake was meant to be a better version of Goodyear's Thunderbolt tire line. The car was powered by a race-spec 427 cubic inch V8 engine that's been taken from the Ford GT40 MK2. This engine produced over 520 horsepower, so it made the Super Snake one of the most powerful street-legal cars of its time. The car also had upgraded suspension, larger brakes, and custom gearing to handle all its extra power. This muscle car could reach over 170 miles an hour and was kind of a miracle back in the 60s. You won't believe that only one original 1967 Shelby GT500 Super Snake was ever built, so it makes sense why it's so rare. Due to its high price and high performance, it was never meant to be produced for a huge group of buyers. All the car collectors in the world would have tried to own one of these cars. The original Super Snake's been selling for millions at auctions. So if you're hoping to see this muscle car around you, we hate to break it to you, but that's not going to happen. The AMC Rebel machine was introduced in 1970 by American Motors Corporation, and they wanted to enter the muscle car wars. This car was powered by a 390 cubic inch V8 engine that produced 340 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. It had a standard 4-speed manual transmission and functional hood scoop with a tachometer. The Rebel machine could go from 0 to 60 in about 6.8 seconds. The car had heavy-duty suspension, dual exhaust, power front disc brakes, and a limited slip differential, so the car could easily handle its extreme power. The Rebel machine's most rare feature was its aggressive appearance because of a red, white, and blue paint scheme, the bold style and unique hood scoop and flared fenders. Unfortunately for us, the AMC Rebel machine was produced in limited numbers and only around 2,326 units got built. If AMC had been as famous as Ford and GM back in the 60s, we might have gotten to see more Rebel machines. Also, because of the high price, many buyers thought if they were going to spend that much money, they'd rather go for a Mustang or GTO. Many of the Rebel machines were used in racing and had to be modified, so there's only a couple of the original ones left. The Ford Mustang Mach 1 was introduced in 1969, and it was meant to get over the gap between typical Mustangs and high-performance Shelbys. The Mach 1 came with a variety of engine options, but the most powerful one was the 428 Cobra Jet V8, which produced up to 335 horsepower. Some other options were the 351 Windsor V8 and the 390 cubic inch V8. The car had a signature black hood stripe, hood scoop, chin spoiler, rear deck spoiler, and sporty side stripes. The Mach 1 was more than just a muscle car under the hood. It had functions like higher suspension, power front disc brakes, and dual exhaust. The interior was rare, just like the car, because it had high back bucket seats and a sports steering wheel. Some of the old Mustang Mach 1s are becoming more rare today because of their high performance that led to so many accidents. The original Mach 1 models like the 428 Cobra Jet are quite famous in the collector's market. Although this iconic muscle car was preserved, it's still quite rare. The Buick GSX was introduced in 1970 and became the ultimate muscle car and high-performance version of the Grand Sport GS455. This car had a 455 cubic inch V8 engine with two versions like the standard 350 horsepower model and the Stage 1 package, which had an extreme 360 horsepower and a 510 pound-foot of torque. This made the GSX the highest torque rating car out of all the American muscle cars. The GSX came with heavy-duty suspension, front and rear sway bars, and power front disc brakes, so it performed well at the tracks and on the street as well. The car could hit a quarter mile in over 13 seconds, so this also made it one of the fastest cars. Overall, the GSX stood out with its bold styling and various vibrant paint options. The GSX is rare due to its limited production run. In 1970, only 678 units were built, and only 400 of them had the high-performance Stage 1 engine. Buick was not really famous for muscle cars, so the buyers had some reservations. Many muscle car enthusiasts often ignored the GSX because they were too focused on the mainstream brands. Also, due to the extreme performance, many GCXs got raced or modified. Today, the Buick GSX is a highly priced collector's car because of its immense power and luxurious interior. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda was introduced in 1970 and is one of the most legendary and rare muscle cars ever produced. This car was the high-performance version of the Barracuda, run by Chrysler's 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine. This engine was known for its hemispherical combustion chambers and had a 425 horsepower and 490 pound-foot of torque. The Hemi Cuda could go from 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds and hit the quarter mile in the low 13-second range. Can you imagine how fast this is? The car had a heavy-duty suspension, rear axle, and front disc brakes to handle its power. The Hemi Cuda's appearance was just as aggressive as its performance. The car had a shaker hood scoop, which was used to increase airflow. There were many great styling techniques like bold graphics, side gills, dual exhaust, and optional rear spoilers. The interior was not only sporty but quite luxurious. In 1970, only 650 Hemi Cudas were ever produced, and only 14 of them were convertibles. So car enthusiasts were trying to buy the rare convertibles. The company had to limit their production because the engine they were using was so powerful and expensive. We all know that trends come and go, so the muscle car era was coming to an end. Due to all the insurance costs and fuel prices, it made it impossible for buyers to drive this car frequently. Today, Plymouth Hemi Cudas are convertibles, and among the most valuable and collectible muscle cars, and they often sell for millions at auctions. So, if you had all the money in the world, which one of these rare muscle cars would you want to own? Would you like to drive such a rare car around, or just keep it safe in your garage? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more iconic cars.